Hey, what's up, CAUSENETIC family?
Welcome to the CAUSENETIC podcast.
CAUSENETIC means being a person or thing that gives rise to a phenomenon that is dynamic or energizing.
We're tackling topics and telling the truth.
I'm Keith Vincent.
And I'm Rodrigo Ross.
Today, we're going to talk about radical generosity.
Radical generosity.
This transformative thing of the power of giving.
So this whole idea of radical, I think the word radical gets a bad rap. Now, and in some contexts, I understand why, because typically when people are talking about radical, they're talking about those who espouse these outlier beliefs, and they're really kind of vigilant about that, and it usually has a political connotation. But the reality is, why I love the English language, is that words often have more than one meaning. Mm-hmm. And so radical is not necessarily a negative term. It can be used to talk about something that is very new and different and unusual, a departure from the ordinary. And that's not always a bad thing.
But it's so big of a word, too. It's like radical means that I'm about to go off and do something.
I'm finna go off.
Yeah. And when I think about Mackenzie Scott,
whoa, she went off.
And what she did,
that was radical.
I mean, just a small portion of the 43 YMCAs across the country and our national office
that was radical.
That she gave millions.
Extreme change, coinage. That was pretty radical. That's huge.
That's huge. So when I think of radical, I think of that type of boldness right there.
Okay, but to my point, that's not a bad thing.
That is not a bad thing.
That was definitely a good thing.
That is not a bad thing at all. And you know, the thing I like about her also is that her deal is that she's not trying to tell the world what she did.
No, everybody else was telling it.
In the recent New York Post blog that she wrote about is that, hey, this is not about me. I want the attention to go on to the organizations who are out there making the impact. So if you want to write a media story, go tell their stories.
Right.
And then, but you think about that. So the gift that she gave, the millions and millions and millions of dollars that she gave,
right,
the long-term impact.
Yes.
So when I think about Dallas and what we did with part of that money is that we got $10 million off of that, and Kirk Hazelbaker and the foundation board, they decided to take $1.5 million and put it towards endowment for matching.
Right.
And so, man, that idea went out so fast.
It did. I mean, so many people gravitated towards that. It was really very innovative.
And it's allowing people to create legacies.
Yes. And allowing this money to live way past what just a flat $10 million would live. Its lifespan, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. You put stuff in perpetuity.
Generation to generation to come.
Yeah, it's
I got to talk about what we did.
Okay, go ahead.
So that people can understand.
Okay.
The audacity of
there's your 2022
there's my word again. Audacity to be so radical about your generosity.
So a radical generosity.
And so we came up with the idea, myself, Rodrigo, David Frederick, was our chief marketing officer here at the Dallas Y, to make sure that African American staff for years and years to come that they can have money towards training and development.
Right.
And so we went out, we were able to raise $57,000. With that match, got us to $114,000.
Right.
And our commitment that we've made is to make sure that we continue to fundraise for this year after year after year. And the cool part about it is that, when we talked about it, it's like, will people really give to this? It's
and we had a very small base, right?
A
very small donor base, because the idea was we wanted to rally African American staff to support this fund. And that's not to say we weren't appreciative of allies and other folks who wanted to participate, and we will come back knocking for those dollars, But to start it as charter members, it was very important for us, by us, right? And we really and at the time, we only had 20-something African American staff that were able to start this legacy fund that started out with $114,000 in it. That's radical generosity.
Right, and then when you think about we were able to reach out to other staff who had previously worked in here, worked with the Dallas Y.
Yeah.
And these individuals, they have been gone for years. But yet they were still willing to be able to give to this fund right here, understanding the importance of the impact that this will make for years and years to come.
They know years from now, when that fund is still spending off money that could send an African American staff to finish their degree or go to a conference or get some professional development or whatever they need in service to them staying most current and most competitive and inhabiting those spots, whether it's in Dallas or not, right? So one of the things is like you don't have to only get development if you're going to only stay here in the Dallas Y. You could go work somewhere else, inside or outside the Y. We're just dedicated to the staff like that. So I feel you. That's a good example. That is definitely radical.
Shout outs to our CEO and our COO.
Yes,
our CEO, Kurt Hazelbaker, COO, Brandy Perriman, for also making huge contributions towards that fund also.
Yeah.
And, that just, again, that whole radical part about, you know what, hey, I'm invested in this. I'm not just, this is not just for other staff. Hey, I'm going to personally invest in this also.
Personally invest in that. This idea of radical, that is changing the narrative on this concept of radical, which is already happening in other spaces, right? So there's this whole phenomenon, and I talk about it a lot because I am really wholeheartedly trying to embrace the idea of radical self-care, right? This notion that you will not minimize and you will not put your own mental well-being and your own self-care on the back burner, like always push it down on your list of priorities. Like you're going to be almost incessant about making sure that you take care of yourself. Same thing with generosity. Like you are going to be so committed and so outward and so forward facing and so unapologetic about being generous, radical generosity. And so the concept is not new, right? So one of our most famous and probably, I would think, the one Bible verse that many folks, whether they are believers or not, could probably quote, right, that really espouses this whole idea of radical generosity. For God so loved the world, he gave his one and only son, right? That is radical generosity. That's huge.
Well, I could go
and
do a sermon on that.
Come on, Reverend Vincent.
When we talk about the love of God, His one and only,
the one and only begotten Son. Yeah.
I mean, and stand on that church thing. I attend Oak Cliff Bible Fellowship with Dr. Tony Evans as our pastor, and each Sunday, man, for years now, they have what's called Acts of Kindness. And so they've created cards, and every Sunday for the last, several years, he makes sure he says that, hey, go to the bookstore, pick up Acts of Kindness. He says, I would love for our church to be one that people talk about all across the Dallas Metroplex to say that, man, someone did something kind for me. And that something kind can look like, buying somebody's meal or giving somebody money, whatever the case may be. But he also asks that you follow up with praying with that individual also, so that church can be known for a church that does this kind of radical generosity type of kindness towards people.
Yeah. And so the flip side of that, because you definitely do have folks who may not necessarily be believers, or they relate to a different kind of spiritual or religious reality. Let's talk about the science of radical generosity. I'm going to impress you. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
There are neural underpinnings to this idea of radical generosities, right? From a scientific perspective.
Okay.
So neural mechanisms in your brain have led researchers to this hypothesis that the ventral striatum and the temporoparietal junction interact when generous behavior is displayed, right? And in that, your orbitofrontal cortex, or the area of the brain that's linked to decision making, it gets involved as well. So translation,
because that was a little deep right there.
Yeah, because I'm a genius. I knew you was gonna be impressed with that. I'm a genius. So here's the translation. There is some science that says you actually feel better when you're generous. Like there is something that happens in your brain that goes on and that you feel better when you're generous. They've done studies.
I mean, giving liberates the soul of the
there
giver.
Are studies that on the amygdala at that, right? So we know that the amygdala is that little like almond-shaped thing at the base of your brain that it inspires your flight or fight mechanisms, right? It acts way faster than your thinking brain. Like it's the reason why when I was sitting in this office by myself one day and I heard something go through one of those boxes, I didn't think to myself, what's in that box? I got my stuff and left, right? That was my amygdala kicking in. My amygdala. Now when I got in the car about 10 minutes from here, my thinking brain said, I wonder what that was. Sure. But your amygdala, they have done studies where they ask people to think of times when they were really generous or think about the things that really give them joy in relation to generosity while they're taking an MRI, and they see how the amygdala is triggered or not triggered. And so when people are thinking about these radically generous acts, their amygdala is calmed down, which means it's nice. They're not being triggered. But when they're thinking about times when they haven't been as generous or when someone wasn't generous to them, the amygdala is triggered, and then that brings on a much more negative response. Science.
Yeah, you done got deep on that.
I told you I was a genius. I've been telling you.
I'm impressed by what you just said. How about that?
You're welcome.
We'll go right there. Well, people might say, well, I don't have a dime. What you talking about giving and generosity?
I don't have a dime.
But you don't need money to be able to that's not the only way.
You do not.
I mean, some things that you can do. You can make something. So,
like banana pudding. I wonder if Tracy is listening. You think she would?
Melanie Tracy Love, if you're listening.
Melanie Tracy Love.
You need to send out your recipe about banana
Don't
pudding.
send out the recipe, just make us some.
So when I think about making something,
oh no, not you with another. You picked up another habit.
No, it's hobby, not
hobby.
Habit.
Oh God.
And so I'm now into rock carving and engraving. And so, I mean, but I've now
This is after the fishing, after what else was it? Painting.
Yeah.
You made tables.
Yeah.
Wood carving was in there somewhere.
No, not yet. But that's coming.
Oh my God.
But
now it's rock carving.
I mean, but you can take little things. So now, one of the things I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start making people things out of rocks. This all came about because my son, I threw away a box of rocks years ago, and so recently I collected some rocks and I gave them back and I engraved up there, and so now he has a memory that we can have forever. So if you don't have a dime, there's things that you can
engrave
do.
Rocks.
You can use your skills to make something for folks.
Yeah.
But there's also volunteering.
Oh, now people really underestimate the giving of time.
Exactly.
That is absolutely radical, especially for populations where time is a commodity. You know, we've always had this discussion about philanthropy in under-resourced communities, right? And for people who sometimes have a more narrow vision of what philanthropy looks like, they're just thinking it has to be some kind of dollars and cents quantitative thing. They don't understand that when a person who is under-resourced, that could be spending most of their waking hours in search of opportunities that are going to give them money to take care of their family, money that they need to get necessities or to live, but instead they choose to spend time with you or with an organization, giving back, helping out. that is radical generosity.
Right.
Because literally, those people have forfeited the opportunity to make money to come and help you or give back or whatever. And many times they don't get the same accolades. That same kind of energy around stewarding them and thanking them is not there, because we have this really limited idea of what radical generosity looks like, and we only equate it to could you slide your credit card, could you write me a check, right? And that kind of stuff. But absolutely, that giving of time, that is radical generosity for some people.
And also doing it without expecting anything in return.
Yes, with excellence. I mean, doing it with like the levels that folks give back when they give their time is just, it's awe-inspiring to me.
And some people say that is good for your health also.
Volunteering is good for your health.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Now, Mother Teresa said, look, give, y'all.
That's how she said it.
But she said, give until it hurts.
Until it hurts. She said, give, y'all, until it hurts.
That's some deep giving right there.
That's why I'm not Mother Teresa. I'm still working on the till it hurts part.
And Dr. Evans says is that what you are praying for, be willing to give it away.
Wow.
Well, Doc, I need more money. So I can do.
So give it away. Wow. You know why? I think it's because many people who are really tuned into their faith believe that when they get stuff, it is not a matter of I can give it away. It is a matter of I get to give it away, right? Like their whole perspective on the stuff. It's not mine anyway, right? The Lord blessed me with it and I get to give it away. Not that I can give it, right? Like that's a whole different connotation when I can go to Dubai. I get to go to Dubai. I mean, it's just...
Yeah, that's a good perspective on looking at it.
There are some people who are so in tune with their faith that their perspective is just different.
Because no one has ever become poor by giving.
Huh?
No one's ever become poor. So you give and give and give.
Well, you might be onto something, but once again, see, that was my narrow interpretation, right? I'm thinking poor only from the monetary perspective, right? But if you broaden that definition...
Come on. I think somebody gonna pick this up and they're gonna preach on this right here.
Somebody gonna invite us to their church. Are we gonna wear matching outfits if they invite us to the? Oh, we're gonna color coordinate.
Radical generosity. I would love to know, CAUSENETIC listeners, what you guys think about this. I would love to know what do you do in your personal time, your personal space. How radical do you get with your giving? You know, we recently did our annual campaign with our staff, and our part-time staff, they don't make a whole lot of money. And for one of the branches I particularly oversee, the part-time work that they do at the Y, that is all the income.
That's all the income they have, yeah.
And so we ask all of our staff to give to the annual campaign that we do each year. And I thought it was, I just am in awe of our part-time staff that give the amount of money that they do. When I look at what they give and I know how much they make overall, that's a significant impact. And one of the things I appreciate about one of our staff, what she did was she had X amount of dollars that she gave, but she recognized her 3 children with her giving. And it wasn't huge, but her whole thought process of, here's what I have to give. I want to make sure that I honor my kids. And it was one of her grandkids also in her giving. It's like, this is what I have to give for her. That was radical giving.
Nice. You know what?
Radical giving.
There's science behind that too.
Okay.
So the idea is that scientists have discovered that, you know, the basis of our annual campaign is this person-to-person ask, right? Not necessarily, at least here in Dallas, not necessarily events, and we're not out like many other organizations. They sell things like the Girl Scouts may have cookies and the Boy Scouts may have popcorn. There's nothing wrong with that. That's their mechanism. But our thing in the YMCA is this person-to-person ask. That relationship is saying, look, I give, I believe in it so strongly, would you join me and give too, right? And so science shows that people are more apt to be radical givers. They have radical generosity when they are giving to people that they have a relationship with, or to causes that really hit at their core, right? And so when you're out there, just from an annual campaign standpoint, and you're talking to people about giving, understand who you're asking and what really resonates. Like, what is delicious to their ears. Don't go telling them about swimming if they scared of water, because they're going to side-eye you, right? But if their passion really is the education of young children, then talk about the amazing things that you may be doing with your preschoolers or in your child watch or in your after school or school age settings or whatever, and form that relationship and really talk to their heart, not just to their ears. But there is science that says you are much more likely to get a radical giving response when you engage with someone that calms down that amygdala, like we were talking about, because there's something that they connect to in the ask, whether it's you or whether it's the cause. And that's why you probably see so much success with some of these, like I always think about the St. Jude commercials, right? The things they're asking specifically for money, for research, for cancer, for kids. If that is your thing, you're probably more apt to be a radical giver and be radically generous to that thing, as opposed to someone else. Even though you're a fairly generous person, someone else may ask you to support something else, and you're like, I'll give you this little finite gift, but you move differently, when it hits different.
And we should all find something to be
radically generous about.
And again, this is not all about finances right here. This is all about, yes, part of it's finances, part of it is your time, part of it may be things that you have in your house. I know one of the things that you do is that when you recycle your wardrobe, because you pay a good.
I do
pay. Oh,
hey.
Okay. But you don't just take it to you look up different people and humbly going towards somebody to individual and say, hey.
Like, I know that you like things like this, or I've heard you say you liked this purse or these shoes, and I'll just give it to them. I'll gift it to them. I'll put it in a box. I always do it undercover. It's not about me making a big splash. Come in, look at all my stuff. I mean, there have been times when I've just taken, and unfortunately, I am definitely one of those people who I will buy something and the tags will still be on it.
I know we got some that can identify with.
Gosh, but I'll take that stuff, tags on, and I'll mail it to different folks, give it to different people, and that to me, I had some of my most favorite purses that I gave away. Now that I think I'm radically generous. Now that I think about it.
A little selfish. That's not what we're talking about.
Oh, sorry. Okay. I got off task.
Yeah. How do you do that? For me, with clothes also is that never throw them away unless because I'm always a Goodwill type person, because I know that an organization like Goodwill, the radical work that they do in that space right there, they make sure people have opportunities. And so for me, that's my part with my clothes, to be able to give that so that they can continue to do that impactful work right there.
You know what? I had a gentleman that I work with, Terry Kittleson. Terry Kittleson works for an organization called In the City for Good. He's so excellent. I love Terry so hard. And Terry and his organization, most recently, when we've been doing our food distributions, he has come alongside and he said, hey, I want to provide toiletries and other kinds of things like that for families, because if they need food, 9 times out of 10, they're going to need toothpaste and detergent and toilet tissue and soap and that kind of stuff, right? And so he comes along and he brings those things. And so there was a young lady that would come to the distributions fairly regularly, and she would get all of the stuff that we had. And apparently one of the times she came and she got the stuff, the food and the other things that Terry and his organization was providing, and she went 2 blocks down and sold someone the detergent and the fabric softener, right? And I guess it must have gotten back to Terry, right? And everyone thought that he was going to just kind of go crazy and be like, oh, well, I don't want to give anymore because people are taking the things that I'm giving and they're going to sell it. He was like, well, she must have needed the money, right? And his idea, he was like, look, I just want to help her. If at that particular moment she needed to sell that because maybe she needed money to go buy something else, or maybe she needed money to give to a kid for a field trip or for a school lunch, or maybe she just needed money to have in her pocket. Like, don't dehumanize. That's an adult and she may not have had any money in her pockets. Whatever it is, I just want her to have what she thinks she needs. And if that means I gave her the wrong thing and she sold it and got what she needed, okay. And then the next week he doubled down on his. That is radical generosity.
Because in all of this right here, it is not about you.
It's absolutely. It was not about him, his feelings, and him being hurt because she sold the stuff. Yeah. He was like, she got what she needed.
Because he did what he wanted to do, which was being radically generous to that individual right there. And I think sometimes we get into our feelings, we get into ourselves about, well, somebody didn't do this because I did this for them. Well, is that really generosity at that point right there? No, you're doing that for you. Radical generosity is all about the other person. Yeah. It's about the cause that you are trying to impact. Yeah. It is not about you, because once you give it away, it's not yours.
Right.
And so if you're still trying to hold on to it in your mind because somebody didn't do what you wanted to do, check yourself.
That's manipulation.
Yeah, well, well, I ain't gonna veer off too far from that right there.
Because you was getting ready to preach again, Pastor.
I was about to go there. So this CAUSENETIC family is really incredible. I know we have a lot of radical, generous people that are out there. And hey, we want to thank you guys for listening to the CAUSENETIC podcast.
And especially this episode that we're calling Radical Generosity.
Hey, subscribe and listen to us weekly.
And don't be shy, give us a 5-star review.
And as always,
be dynamic,
be phenomenal,
be CAUSENETIC.